Warning, the following podcast is intended for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is advised. If you are sensitive to any content or subject matter in films, I recommend looking up this film on doesthedogdie.com. It is a user-based database of extensive content warnings for pretty much every film you can think of. It basically gives you a heads up to all the potentially triggering topics a movie might have. Check it out and take care of yourself. Welcome back to We Creeps. I'm your host, Evan Exhumed. And just like before, every week I summarize and review a different horror film for people who are a little too squeamish or easily spooked to watch them, but still really enjoy the plot and often end up looking them up on Wikipedia or Googling the ending explained. We, of course, welcome horror movie fans all the same. If loving horror is wrong, then I would like to stay wrong because there's no reason to be right. Today we will be discussing the horror mystery thriller They/Them, directed by John Logan, written by John Logan, starring Theo Germain, Kevin Bacon, Quell Tan, Austin Crute, Monique Kim, and Anna Lore. Also, just to be fair, there are like 12 characters in this movie, so I'll do my best to make sure you know who I'm talking about more than just saying it by name. That said, I actually really do like They/Them. You've probably heard of it because of the sort of silly name, but it is kind of a silly movie, and so this is a queer horror movie made by queer people, and it's a slasher, and it's kind of bad, but it's like bad in like a fun, campy way. I think that a lot of people sort of dismissed this or took it too seriously when they watched it, but I think it is really just meant to be like a silly sort of bad slasher. And if you go into it with that mindset, I think you'll have a lot of fun, and I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with this episode. So with all that said, let's get started on this 2022 banger of a bad horror movie, They/Them. The movie begins with a sort of butch-looking woman driving a long, kind of in the middle of nowhere forest road, and she's listening to a podcast that's about being murdered in the middle of nowhere, essentially, and she just turns it off. She goes, nope. And of course, her tires all pop. Then suddenly, as she gets out, she is murdered. She is slashed by what we assume is going to be our main villain here. So she dies. And then we transition to the main location of the film, which is Whistler Camp, which is a gay trans conversion therapy camp. So buckle up for that one. We then move to the daytime and we see all of the kids. They're probably about 17 or 18 years old, getting out of the bus. There's probably about 10 of them. And we are introduced to Kevin Bacon's character, Owen Whistler, who is the owner of the camp and essentially the manager, the top dog. And he comes out. It's really interesting. He's very like opening and welcoming. And he's like, I can't make you straight. I don't want to make you straight. Gay people are totally fine with me. But you feel like maybe that's not right for you. If you feel like, you're struggling, you're being bullied, and there's things that you want to change about yourself, that's what I'm here for. We come from a place of love. I don't think God hates you, etc. Which, sounds kind of reassuring in a way if you forget that this is a gay conversion camp. So, without that context, that would have been nice if you were at like a church or something. But this is a gay conversion camp, so there's a clear end goal here. So from there, he introduces the staff. So we have Dr. Cora Whistler. She's the licensed therapist, and his wife. We have a nurse, Molly. We have a hunky Zane, who is the athletics director. And then we have Sarah, who is Zane's fiance, who is the activities director. So those are all the counselors. We also have Balthazar, which is a really weird name, but he is the camp custodian who looks really fucking creepy and weird. Oh, and then they have a dog named Duke, who is a bloodhound, who's just kind of chilling. He's an old dog. So the characters are told that they have the boys' cabins and the girls' cabins, and so to split up according to their gender. And then we have one character left, which is Jordan, and they are non-binary, so they're sort of in a predicament here. They are also our main character, so Jordan is probably one of the most important characters for you to remember here. So Jordan looks at Owen as first of all, I'm they, them, pronouns, non-binary, this camp is bullshit, this isn't working for me. And so Owen's like, I kind of wish we did have a non-binary cabin, but we just don't, so how about you go to the boys' cabin if that's where you feel most comfortable. And, I respect your transition. I respect your process. So hopefully that works out okay. Is that fine? And Jordan's like, yeah, I guess so. Which again, if this wasn't a gay conversion camp, Owen seems like a pretty nice dude, but just got to keep reminding people when they're watching this, it's like, this is still a gay conversion camp. So it's just like, it's not a safe place, regardless of how safe you feel. We now get to a little circle therapy session where we are introduced to all the other characters. First, we have Toby, who's like kind of a theater kid. He is only coming to the camp because he wants to get tickets to some Broadway show that his parents like offered for him. Then we have Veronica, who is like kind of an alt girl. She's hates that she's bisexual. Then we have Stu, who's a jock. He's just, very caught up in heteronormativity. He just wants to be a straight jock. We have Kim, who's just kind of a normal blonde, kind of Christian-y looking girl, and she just doesn't want to be a lesbian anymore. Then we have Alexandra, who is a queer black woman, forced here by her parents. Then finally we have Gabriel, who sounds kind of French or something, and he's long hair, kind of, androgynous looking, and, he's sad that he gets called the F slur all the time in high school and just doesn't want to be bullied anymore. Finally, we get to our main character, Jordan, who reveals that they come from a religious background and that they are essentially using this as a way to get emancipated from their parents. So once they do this, they can live on their own and they won't be held to their parents' whims. So Kevin Bacon's character, says some more kind words, and then everybody leaves the little hall. And we see Balthazar kind of creepily looking at the girls, so that will come up later. The next morning, Alexandra gets up by herself in the very early morning to take a shower. As she is showering, she is approached by one of the counselors, the activities director, and we see that she is looking down at her. It is then revealed that Alexandra is not just a queer black woman, but a queer black trans woman, which she did not disclose to the camp, which upsets the counselors. The counselors force Alexandra to go to the boys' cabin and continuously misgender her. They force her to wear boys' clothes, which is kind of a touching moment because the boys actually help her get clothes because obviously she doesn't have any because she's not a boy. And so it's just, this is kind of the first sign that Owen is kind of a shitty human being. I mean, again, we are at a conversion therapy counseling center, whatever. So all the queer kids are all really looking out for each other, which I kind of like and love because, they're in a survival situation. So they move on to their day's camp activities and we see everybody is lined up. Jordan is in a dress to sort of silently protest, and Kevin Bacon's character is like, I don't really think that's your, the right clothes for you, Jordan. And Jordan's just like, what? Not my color. So it's, it's a nice little show from our main character, Jordan, that they are retaliating against sort of the stupid rules and the bigoted rules that are being enforced on other members. From there, we get a nice little montage over, I don't know, the course of a day, I suppose. A nice little montage of them doing all the camp activities and talking in therapy. We also see that the alt girl, Veronica, and the blonde girl, Kim, are sort of vibing romantically, so that will come up later. Alexandra sneaks into the nurse's office and is caught by the nurse, Molly, and Alexandra reveals that she was coming in to steal back her estrogen that she needs, and Nurse Molly does her a solid and lets her take the estrogen, and then she leaves. We can see on Nurse Molly's face that she is having a bit of a conundrum or a, cognitive dissonance at this statement. So in the middle of the night, they are all woken up by Zane, the sports director guy. The counselors together take them out in the middle of the woods and handcuff them to one other person and are told that they need to walk in a direction for 10 minutes and then stay there the entire night. Super cool, super safe. It's supposed to teach them like reliance and give them self-confidence or something, Kevin Bacon says, but I don't really buy it. Veronica, the alt girl, and Kim, the blonde girl, of course, are handcuffed together and they go off and they share a little moment. There's a little, again, romance vibe going on there. And Alexandra and Jordan are linked together and Jordan is like, I know that this is a conversion camp, so it already feels kind of weird, but I feel like there's something extra wrong about this conversion camp. Alexandra and Jordan then hear somebody, and it is the masked killer just standing there, and Jordan, without missing a beat, is just like, who is that? And the killer person just like walks away. So that was just kind of funny that Jordan did just not even fucking hesitate there. So while the kids are out in the forest, we see that the counselors are going through all of their shit, just to, I guess, get information on them. And the therapist counselor finds Jordan's Bible and a picture of them and their family. I guess they're an army brat, and sees just some stuff that Jordan writes about in the Bible and draws on, and just sort of criticizing the Bible, and so the therapist kind of is excited to be able to use that against them. The next day, Jordan has a therapy session with the camp therapist, Cora, who is also Owen's wife, I think I mentioned, and she is just like super shitty to Jordan and basically sums up that the reason that Jordan is non-binary is because they don't fit within either binary and they just want their parents to love them. So if they can't be a good boy or they can't be a good girl, then they're just going to be they. And it really does seem to upset Jordan. And a lot of the stuff that the counselor is saying is just really fucking awful and just really homophobic, but done in kind of like an insidious way to make it sound like she cares. But yeah, Jordan is visibly upset by this, and then the session is over and they leave. Later that night in the cabins, Jordan is having a bit of a rough time with the conversation that they had with the counselor, and Alexandra comes in, being a homie. And she tells Jordan, like, hey, this is just who we are. Sometimes we have to wear masks to protect ourselves in this world, but hey, it's okay. And she starts singing a Pink song. I believe the name is Fucking Perfect. And the entire cabin / camp kids go into a musical montage of them singing this Pink song. And it is so fucking delightful. Everyone's bonding. The jocks bonding, the alt girls bonding, the blonde girls bonding, everybody's bonding and singing Pink. This is probably my favorite scene in the movie, and it gets me every time because it's just so funny and out of place, but works somehow so well. In the middle of the night, Jordan gets up and begins to investigate the camp a little bit. They go into the office of the main camp counselor, Owen, and looks in his desk and finds a bunch of photos of LGBT people beaten and abused over probably the course of 50 or 60 years by this camp. And of course is very shocked considering Owen has been sort of spouting this whole love and peace, we care about you nonsense. And then Jordan is caught by Nurse Molly, who then is like, what's going on here? What are you doing? And Jordan shows this to all of Nurse Molly, and Nurse Molly is completely shocked and is like, I didn't know. I, had an idea, but I couldn't confirm it. And so Jordan is like, will you help us get the hell out of here? And Nurse Molly agrees that she will help them. Nurse Molly also warns Jordan that Owen does not like them. And Jordan responds, he has no idea who he's hunting this time. What a badass. We then move to Balthazar, the camp maintenance man. He has a very creepy little shack that's filled with dolls, of course, and he has a security system throughout the entire camp, including in the women's shower stall where he is creepily watching. Then suddenly out of nowhere, our killer, our slasher, shows up behind him and smashes his face into the computer screen. It's like an old computer screen, so there's like actually glass in it, and he is fucking murdered. So he had a pretty short role here in They Slash Them, but it was nice to see him murdered in such a fitting way. The next day, the counselors split up the kids by gender. The boys are going to shoot guns in a field, and the girls are going to bake a pie. While this is happening, Nurse Molly is examining one of the sheds that is kind of creepy looking and is kind of ominous. I think probably some bad stuff goes on in there, so she is sneaking in to check that out. Inside the creepy shack, there's like a bunch of chains and weird tools and shit, and then there's a room that has a lock on it, but Molly is caught by the counselor woman, Cora, and is like, hey, you're part of the program, right? And Nurse Molly's like, yeah, for sure. And so she's like, okay, well, let's get the hell out of here because you're not supposed to be in here. So I feel like Nurse Molly is kind of coming along to our side, which is good. But we then return to the shooting range with the quote boys. Owen gives some like weird biology lecture about how men need to be men and hunt and impregnate things and survive. They all just practice firing rifles poorly, but Jordan, is pretty good at this and challenges Zane, the camp sports director, to a little shoot off. And so Jordan just fucking absolutely dunks on Zane. Then Owen, the owner of the camp, tells everyone that he needs a killer, and he picks out Toby, the theater kid from earlier, to be the one to do whatever he's requesting, which is to kill Duke, the dog that we briefly mentioned. He says that old Duke has cancer and is in pain, and that Toby needs to shoot him in the head to put him out of his misery. And so Toby's like, no, I'm not going to just randomly kill this dog. And so Owen is like, well, if you don't do that, I'm going to have the sports director guy, Zane, get the sledgehammer, and he's going to break both of the dog's legs and put him in even more pain, and then you're going to have to watch that. So he yells at Toby a bunch to do it, and then Jordan, being a complete badass, just shoots the dog in the head, unprompted, to save Toby of that pain. Jordan is a motherfucking badass, and I feel bad that they had to do that, but it was very noble of them to do that for Toby. Meanwhile, while this is all happening at the girls' portion, they're baking pies. Veronica is doing very poorly. However, Kim, the blonde, is doing pretty well. And the camp activities director, Sarah, is like weirdly hitting on Kim, the blonde girl. And this is making Veronica visibly uncomfortable. But throughout the whole scene, she just does like really weird things and like touches her arm and stuff. And at the end, she excuses everybody except Kim and like touches her on the arm and is like, damn, your pie is so good. I wish I could get into that. And Kim is extremely uncomfortable by this and just sort of like brushes her off and sort of panics and leaves. So Kim, the blonde, is now on the dock of the little lake or whatever that's there, smoking some weed. And Veronica, the alt girl, comes up and is like, hey, what's going on? And Kim explains the situation and how she was harassed by the counselor. And so they kind of share a moment. We also learned that Veronica is actually not a repressed bisexual, but is actually a college student who is doing a report or project or thesis or something on conversion camps. So she is there incognito. The two bond a little bit more and then proceed to have sex on the dock. So we get a nice little queer sex scene amongst all of the, trauma that we're experiencing here. And it's quite tasteful, I will say. We then snap back to Jordan, Alexandra, and Toby, who are discussing a way to get out of the camp because after the whole killing dog thing, they realize that this camp is a complete fucking nightmare. There's tons of evidence to back that up, so they are planning to escape the next day. We then join Stu, the jock boy. He is swimming, and the weird French gay boy, Gabriel, joins him, and it's just like, hey there, baby boy. And, they just kind of flirt a bit and just start making out, and they go off to find a cabin or something to get their fuck on. The cabin that they end up in is the weird one that Nurse Molly found earlier, with all the chains and shit. And so Stu and Gabriel get their fuck on. And, it's a pretty good scene. I'm not going to lie here. Stu, I guess, falls asleep right after they bone and then wakes up, and Gabriel is fully clothed and is like, how do you feel? And Stu's like, oh, I feel good now, but I might feel a little guilty later. And Gabriel's like, there's so many labels, gay, queer, trans, none of it really matters. The only thing that matters is predator and prey. Which are you? And Stu's like, this is the weirdest post-sex talk I've ever had in my life. The lights come on. We have Zane, the coach, activities director guy, and we have Owen, Kevin Bacon, and they are there to torture the shit out of Stu. And Gabriel, the weird French person, actually happened to be one of the secret counselors who I guess seduces the other gay men in the camp and gets butt fucked in an attempt to cure them. I don't know. I can't imagine being a gay dude and just being well, okay, I'm going to offer my services as a weird gay conversion supporter, but my whole role is to seduce gay young men and get fucked in the butt. It's just so crazy that they would allow this based on how, what kind of people they are. So they then force Stu, Gabriel, Owen, and Zane to sit in a chair and be strapped to a giant battery electrodes or something for what they call aversion therapy, which is basically showing you things that you like and then electrocuting you when you see them. So that way your body learns to feel fear or upset or panic whenever they see them. So they basically strap him, electrocute him, and show him pictures of like gay underwear models and just shock him every time that happens. So there's a bit of torture here. It's not too over the top, but I think the context is more upsetting than the actual visuals. So just be aware of that. Once they're done torturing Stu, they take him to the nurse, and Nurse Molly is just like, this is bullshit. This is fucked up. You're torturing kids. I'm going to call the police. And Owen, the head camp counselor / owner, says, do you think the cops are really going to help you? I'm a man of respect in this area. I'm on the Chamber of Commerce, whatever that means. And he just basically is just like, they're not going to do anything because they know what I'm doing already. We then see the sports director and activities director, Zane and Sarah, reminder that they are married, laying in bed in their underwear together, going through the kids' phones, and they find nudes of the kids. Zane finds the boys. Sarah finds the girls, and they both look at them and are like, yeah, this will do it for us. So they start having sex while looking at pictures of the same gender as them. And so, of course, obviously the conversion therapy worked super well for them. And while they're fucking, the slasher, the masked killer, comes in behind them and kills them, splattering blood all over the phones. We now have 4 total victims for this slasher person. And the slasher character actually uses an axe, which is my favorite slasher weapon, if you didn't know. Fun fact. We then jump back to Gabriel, who is, I guess, chilling in the lake at night, eating chocolate. I guess he gets like a little treat every single time he gets butt fucked by one of these people at the camp. I don't know. Just it was some weird dynamic between him and the therapist woman, Cora. So he's chilling. And then he sees Balthazar's body swim up next to him. He freaks out, runs to the shore, and then boom, we have slasher killer person there, knocks him out, and then takes him back to the shed, wet, puts him on that chair with the electrodes and shit, and just cranks that motherfucker to max and just fries the fuck out of Gabriel, killing this queer traitor. About an hour later, girlfriend and girlfriend Veronica and Kim go off to try to sneak and find some liquor or something, I don't know, in the main mess hall, and then see 4 of the counselors just laid out, dead, just sitting on one of the tables, and they freak out and scream. And at that moment, all of the power in the camp turns off. So everyone gathers together, the remaining counselors, the remaining kids, which is all of them because none of them died. But the kids go look to get the school bus to get everybody out of there. And Cora and Owen, the husband and wife, leader of the camp / therapist of the camp, go to the gun safe to protect themselves. Molly, the nurse, just sort of looks confused the entire time, but Owen is pretty sure it's a kid who's killing all the counselors. Toby, the theater kid, goes to find Stu, and Stu is like laying there, still passed out from being electrocuted. And Toby grabs his hand, and Stu grabs it, and they kind of have a moment of romance there. I didn't mention that they kind of had a little vibes here and there because it wasn't super important, but I guess, it was so small that it was just like whatever. As Cora, the evil therapist, is opening up the gun locker safe, she is murdered by the slasher very quickly. Doesn't even really show anything. I guess the camp kids couldn't find the keys or something for the bus, so Alexandra offers to take all of the extra kids that don't have names who are in the camp to just, I guess, walk to the main road and try to get help. So she gathers them all around and takes them off to be saved or to call the police or something. Jordan decides to go try and get the guns themselves because therapist lady has not come back. So just as Jordan is about to open the gun cabinet, we see Owen, the owner of the camp, come into his office, and Jordan quickly hides in the cabinet. And Owen is then confronted by our masked killer, who, well, I will say, actually has an extremely cool mask. Like, I really like the mask that they chose for this killer. It's like kind of stitched together between 2 faces. One's like kind of a skull. The other's just kind of a normal white face. It's really cool. If you see the movie, you'll know what I mean. So Owen gets pushed down by the masked killer, and the killer unmasks themselves and is revealed to be Boom, Nurse Molly. Points for you if you figured this out already. I thought it might be Molly, but I was just like, I don't know, maybe. I don't know. I guess I wasn't trying too hard to think about who it was, but I had assumed it was probably a kid or something. But it's revealed that Nurse Molly was actually a kid there, and her name is actually not Molly. Molly was the person, the butch woman, who we saw in the beginning of the movie. She was the one who was murdered, and Nurse Molly is actually Angie, who was actually a kid at the camp many years ago. Angie reveals that she was tortured here with the electrocution chair, and then after she had left the camp, she had attempted suicide. She had a lot of self-hatred, and she basically kind of just lost it. I mean, she was just consumed by rage, guilt, and eventually revenge, as we've seen in the last hour and a half of this film. So Owen and her kind of have a little bit of a struggle, and then Jordan pops out of the cabinet. Jordan is holding the revolver that Owen had in his desk, which I forgot to mention. But yeah, he pulled out a revolver when he had entered the office originally. So now Jordan is holding the revolver on both Owen and Angie / Molly, the nurse. So at this point, Owen and Angie stand up. Angie is advocating for the death of Owen. Owen is saying, hey, you're not this kind of person. Shooting a dog is one thing, but shooting a human being is another. And so you have kind of these two sides, of the spectrum that are arguing for Jordan to do what they want, which is, give in or to kill Owen, which is like, the personification or something of the homophobia that they experience. And so Jordan makes the decision to not shoot either of them and is like, I'm making my own choice, which, has some commentary, I'm sure. So while this is happening, Angie takes advantage of Owen being distracted and pushes him into the wall, which has a giant rhinoceros head on it. So I guess Owen also liked to kill things in Africa, which is a few points down for him. And so he is impaled by a rhinoceros horn and is killed. And then right after that, Angie looks at Jordan and goes, it gets easier, you'll see, which is fucking hilarious. If you're not familiar, there was a whole campaign for LGBT people to, essentially help them prevent themselves from suicide and stuff, and saying, it gets better. So it's kind of hilarious that they use that for this. Angie then tries to appeal to Jordan once again, saying, hey, there's tons of camps like this. You and me, we can be like a murder duo, queer Dexter vibe, essentially, and we can just go around the country killing everybody. And Jordan's like, no, I don't really want to do that. That seems like a lot, and not really. That's not my truth. So Jordan's like, yeah, I'm not going to help you. I'm just going to do whatever I want, and I'm not going to have anybody tell me who I'm supposed to be ever again. Not you, or not the crazy homophobic torture people either. So Jordan walks out, and the cops show up and arrest Angie / Molly. And so I stand Angie. I think Angie has a point. I don't mean to get too political on this podcast, but I was team Angie pretty much the whole time here. It's also kind of funny too, because Jordan walks out of the building and all the cops just swarm right past them, which is not how the cops would behave. They would see a person bursting out of a building that had just been reported for murder and immediately put their guns on them. But I don't know. So yeah, that was kind of funny to me and made me laugh. So towards the end, we see that Stu and Toby go off into the ambulance together. Stu is like, he can come with, he's family. So I guess they're going to be in a relationship. I don't know. It was kind of stupid. And then we see Veronica and Kim, and they tell Jordan that they're going to tell Kim's parents that they're an item now. Angela just like, live your truth, Jordan. And Jordan's like, for sure I will. And Jordan walks ahead of them a little bit and holds on to their necklace and looks into the distance at their life ahead of them now that they're going to be emancipated from their parents. And then the Pink song, Fucking Perfect, starts to play, and the movie ends. That's it. That's the whole movie. So I do love this movie because straight people have gotten tons of really bad slashers for decades at this point. So I think it was about time that non-binary, queer, LGBT people should get their own bad slasher. I feel like this is indicative of progress that we're making, that you can be queer and make a bad slasher and not have people say, hey, this is why queer people don't make slashers. I thought this was this film. I think it's a fun film. It's stupid. The plot points at some point don't make sense. But again, it's just a fun bad slasher that you can watch like any other slasher you'd see in the 80s. So I highly recommend watching this movie, especially if you are a queer person or part of the LGBTQIAA family. I would just say going into it, be aware that it is a gay conversion camp and bad things happen here. And so just be sure to go into that knowing that so you don't get too upset or, have a bad day from it. Oh, and I mean, I love also that this film is essentially the bury your queers trope turned on its head. Not a single queer person. Well, I guess technically the counselors were queer, but they just were repressed. But they were evil queers. So it was only the evil queers that got killed. They were the evil camp counselors. So all the homophobic, terrible people were killed. And none of the really cool, awesome kids were killed at all. They all lived. It was fine. So anyway, that was They/Them, the 2022 horror thriller mystery. And thank you for listening. Let me know what you think. You can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and just give me a holler. Maybe tell me a movie that you'd like me to review if it's too scary for you. Also, please be sure to rate the podcast if you like it. If you don't like it, keep your opinions to yourself because they hurt my feelings and I'm very sensitive. If you are looking to support the podcast directly, you can find me on Patreon. We have different levels if you are looking to just support a little bit or support a lot. I also have merch on TeePublic. You can just find that by looking up We Creeps on TeePublic. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful start to your Monday. I will be having to go to the dentist, so that is the real horror that I will be experiencing this week. So while I am being drilled away in the dentist chair, do be sure to think of me and don't forget to stay spooky out there.